I asked a couple of my friends to send me in a hot take so it'll soften the blow of what I'm about to say. So, here's a couple hot takes from my friends. Just kidding, I don't have friends. Now that that's out of the way, here's my hot take. I like the Star Wars sequels, and I know, if you're a Star Wars fan, I might as well have just spit on your grave. I mean, honestly, no one hates Star Wars more than a Star Wars fan. But you know what? I'm gonna be the first Star Wars fan to actually fucking say I really don't think the sequels are that bad. Yes, they have plot holes, they have issues, but literally all of the Star Wars movies do. I'm gonna get into spoilers for like the Star Wars sequels, but you've watched them. Like, if you haven't watched them, then that's your own fault at this point. The Rise of Skywalker came out in, what, 2019? That was 7 years ago. So yeah, spoiler warning, all that shit, but yeah, I'm gonna talk about them. I wanna get one thing straight right off the bat. George Lucas fucking sucks at making movies. That's not even just my opinion. Apparently, before A New Hope was even released, that movie was so terrible until his wife fucking edited it and made it watchable. But anyways, with that aside, I might as well get started on the plot holes since I've already mentioned it. The sequels had plot holes, but I think people forget that the original movies also had plot holes. I'm just gonna list out a couple of them. Like, starting off with the very first movie, A New Hope. Luke is supposedly hidden from Vader and the Empire. Yet he lives on Anakin's home planet with Anakin's relatives while openly using the surname Skywalker. It should not have taken Darth Vader so long to realize that Luke was his son. Even when told by Emperor Palpatine that Luke is his son, Vader is like, how is that possible? Bruh, you have the Force. You should have known that was your son as soon as you saw him. Another one that everyone points out in the original trilogy is Leia tells Luke that she remembers her mother being beautiful but sad, even though Padme died moments after childbirth. Also in the original trilogy, Obi-Wan tells Luke that Yoda trained him, even though Qui-Gon Jinn is the one that trained Obi-Wan. I did just realize plot hole isn't the right word for this. I'm gonna use the word retcon, because it is insane how often George Lucas retcons these movies. But it's not just retcons, it's continuity errors, it's unexplained shit, it's character logic issues, it's law inconsistencies. I genuinely think the entirety of the Star Wars movies, now that all 9 films are out, actually need writing together as one big story and re-released. Because no matter how you try to spin it, the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, and the prequel trilogy are all a mess. But with that being said, why do I like the sequels? Because the sequels suffer with just as much, if not more, issues than the originals and the prequels. And it's the same reason why I like the prequels and the originals despite their problems. They're just fun movies. I do also think that the sequels are the more visually appealing and beautiful movies too, with maybe the only Star Wars film that I'd say looks better probably being Revenge of the Sith. Does half of that come down to the original trilogy being old and outdated? Yeah. Like, I'm sure if the original trilogy released today, it would look so much different to how it looks right now. But I want to get into some of the issues that I see people have with the sequels and try to defend them a little bit. One of the ones I hear a lot is that Rey becomes overpowered very quickly, which is not true. I want to point out, in Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren and Rey having that fight, Kylo Ren is completely overpowering her. And people would be like, yeah, but she beat him in Force Awakens while being completely untrained. He also got shot in the fucking stomach with a bowcaster. I don't want to sound dramatic, but take a fencing competition, for example. If you put 2 people in a room, one of them with a bleeding, painful hole in their stomach, and one of them being completely new to fencing, I have a feeling the person who's new to fencing would win. I don't think that's an issue of Rey being overpowered quickly. I think it's just a case of a bad matchup. People refer to Rey as a Mary Sue, but Luke destroyed the Death Star in the first movie with no training by using the Force. Anakin won a space battle at the age of 9. And let's not forget, Anakin was a complete nobody. And Luke had the ancestry from Anakin, so he's not really a nobody. But Rey has the ancestry from Emperor Palpatine. I also know there's this like ongoing theory. I don't know if it's a theory or if it's confirmed. I'm pretty sure it's a theory. There was this theory that Palpatine manipulated the midichlorians for Anakin, so technically he's a descendant of Palpatine as well, so I don't know if that's canon or not, but I don't think it's canon. I could be very wrong on this point though, so don't quote me on that. But I don't think that Rey is a Mary Sue, because protagonists in Star Wars have always learned absurdly fast. There is one thing I want to criticize and defend at the same time, and that is Palpatine. Let me get the negatives out of the way first. Somehow, Palpatine returned. Are you gonna explain how? Like, it doesn't ever touch up on it again. Like, it goes into the whole, like, cloning thing. They never say Palpatine was cloned, but they imply it with the whole, like, Snoke clone stuff. Which is fine, but don't just, like, move on from that. Like, it never bothers to explain itself once. It's just like, oh yeah, Palpatine's back. But I think the one thing that makes it worse is that it was revealed in a fucking Fortnite event. I shit you not, if you weren't there for it or you didn't know about it, like, Palpatine's return was revealed in a Fortnite event. Like, how fucking ridiculous is that sentence? They didn't tease it in The Last Jedi, and I don't know, the way they went about it was ass. I also think that the criticism that it hurt Anakin's sacrifice in Return of the Jedi is completely valid. And while some people would argue that Anakin still saved Luke and still redeemed himself by destroying the Empire, the ending of Return of the Jedi now lost its finality. In the end of it, the core problem wasn't Palpatine returning, it was poor build-up, a rushed explanation, a panic-driven storytelling, and a lack of trilogy planning. But here's where I'm gonna come to defend it. In Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine tells Anakin about Darth Plagueis, saying he could save others from death, but not himself. The scene becomes way more important if Palpatine spends decades trying to achieve immortality himself, because Sith are obsessed with conquering death. Before the Disney canon, like when all the like Star Wars Legends stuff was happening, in the comic series Dark Empire, Palpatine does return through cloning. So the Rise of Skywalker wasn't inventing the concept out of nowhere, but it was adopting an old, still controversial idea from Star Wars. But it's not a new idea. It's new to the canon, but it's not a new idea in the universe. I also do think that as the overarching villain, Palpatine does make more sense, because Snoke completely lacked depth. They could have done a lot more with Snoke and made him the overarching villain, but no one really cared about Snoke anyways. Kylo Ren couldn't have been the overarching villain because he wasn't pure evil, and like, even from The Force Awakens, he was talking about how he was battling with the light. Realistically, if Kylo Ren and Snoke don't fit that mantle as the overarching villain, the trilogy needs a larger final threat, and I think that's where Palpatine fills his role really well. I also do like that The Rise of Skywalker does make Palpatine a lot more creepy, because the cloning isn't perfect. Like, if you look at him in the movie, he's decaying. He looks like a fucking corpse. So as much as I don't see the execution as perfect, I don't think it was entirely out of place. Moving on from Palpatine about something that is actually probably my favorite thing out of the entire trilogy. Second hot take of the video. Prepare your balls. I think Kylo Ren is one of the best characters in all of Star Wars. I think Kylo Ren is one of the most interesting villains in the franchise, because he's trying so hard to be someone that he's not. He's trying to imitate Darth Vader because he thinks that his anger and his rage will make him complete. But unlike Vader, he's emotionally unstable, he's insecure, he's conflicted, he's angry at his own identity, and he's desperate to become evil. I think when The Force Awakens was revealed, a lot of people expected him to be the next Darth Vader, which is what he wants for himself, but the entire point of his character is that he fails to be Darth Vader. He isn't supposed to be the calm, perfected Sith Lord that Vader is. Sith are always portrayed as composed manipulators, but Kylo Ren can't control himself because he's so emotionally raw, and it makes him feel dangerous in a way that you don't know what he's gonna do next. And Adam Driver plays the part amazingly. He plays him like someone who's constantly on the edge of an emotional collapse, who's trying to force themselves to be evil. And I do think his redemption works better than people like to admit. I've seen a lot of people say, like, he killed too many people to be redeemed, but Star Wars redemption has never been about legal justice. Vader committed atrocities. The whole point of redemption in Star Wars is to reject hatred, reclaim humanity, and choose compassion over being evil, which makes Kylo Ren's redemption tragic, because he only becomes himself moments before he dies. I think the sequel trilogy fits into Star Wars far more naturally than people give it credit for. At its core, Star Wars has always been about failure, legacy, redemption, hope, and identity. And the sequels continue those themes through characters like Rey, Kylo Ren, and Luke Skywalker. Luke's disillusionment, Kylo's struggle with inherited trauma and impossible expectations, and Rey's search for belonging all feel deeply connected to the emotional heart of the franchise. The trilogy has its flaws, especially its lack of long-term planning, but Star Wars has always been messy, flawed, and constantly evolving. I think people will grow to love the sequels in the same way that many eventually grew to love the prequels. Once the backlash fades, newer generations will look back on these movies for their emotional storytelling, incredible visuals, memorable characters, and the themes they explored rather than just their controversies. But anyways, that's my hot take. Let me know what you think. And we're actually going to be rewatching every single Star Wars movie in the Discord, so you should totally join my Discord server. Alright, that's it. Have a good day. See ya.